Who's familiar with COPC? Just a couple. Okay, so just real quickly, COPC is a global consulting, training, and certification company. We work with companies all over the world to improve the customer experience by primarily focusing on operations. So call centers, whether you interact with your customers via website, social, any of the channels that we've been talking about. We work with companies all over the world to do that. We've worked with over probably 1,000 companies worldwide, and we've been around for about 20 years. So we actually have a standard on our website that's free to download that incorporates some of what we'll actually talk about today. But there's metrics, best practices for managing a CX operation, so feel free to download that. So what we thought we would do today, as you probably saw in the agenda, on your tables are checklists. And we will pass, if you'll pass those around, what we'll do for the first couple of minutes is have you go through and just kind of self-assess your operation and your organization based on what we have on that piece of paper. What is on that paper is based on all of the best practices that we've seen in the companies that we work with worldwide. It's obviously a little difficult to get everything that's CX-centric on one piece of paper or in 30 minutes, but we wanted to just give everybody a chance to have something tangible to take away and maybe start thinking about things a little bit differently as you go back to your organizations and start to implement some of what you learn the next couple of days. So if everyone just takes about 5 minutes or so, and if anything is not clear, feel free not to answer it yet. And then we'll take questions and kind of just have an interactive discussion about some of the points on there. And we've got some slides and such as well. And one of the, why are we doing this? We saw this morning and yesterday, if you were in those discussions, as you know, there's still this big gap between corporate perception and the customer's experiences. So you still see that 40-point gap between how companies think we're doing in delivering the customer experience and what the customers how the customers think we're actually doing. So.
This mic thing's so funny. Just real quick, so the 40% gap, just for the folks in the room, are we shaking our heads and saying, yeah, there might be a gap at our company, or do we think that there's we actually we're aligned with what the customer's thinking? Just wanted to, so I saw some heads nodding. So raise your hand if you think there's a gap at your company. Okay, all right, and you guys are solid? Okay, all right. Yeah, no, it's good to hear. Okay, yeah, and so that's what we wanted to do is, again, we'll take a chance, and again, to Leslie's point, so based on all the work we've done, some of the best-in-class companies we work with, we said, what's a one-pager of, in order to achieve the excellence we're looking for? We've got the elements there, so if you just filled out, and then we thought we'd just have a discussion about it. So rather than us going through line item by line item, what rings true, what do you have any questions about? And then we can just discuss that as a group, and obviously if you got any best practices amongst yourselves, feel free to share those. Yeah, that's fine.
Maybe right in the middle.
Exactly.
Like right in the middle.
Yeah. Feel free to put an X out to the right, and again, just before you start, so again, I don't have my shot glass with me, but I'm going to say the word omnichannel. If you're not, some companies might say we're not trying to achieve that right now. So that's why we said ROI dependent on that one, because you might say that's not our concern, that's too much to do right now. So that whole section could be NA for you.
Or
so just
maybe
wanted to
levels of omnichannel. So yesterday we had some discussions about we may be trying to create an omnichannel experience between two of our biggest channels, not all channels. So there may be varying degrees of creating this omnichannel experience, depending on where you are. So kind of take that into consideration as well.
All right, so if you'll take 5 minutes, fill that out, and then we'll go from there. And can you hear both of us if we're both standing here? Okay. So let's do that. So we don't have to.
Okay. And feel free to talk to your neighbor as you do this. Hi.
So we're just filling out the checklist.
That checklist. can choose not to share if you wish.
Okay, I think most folks are done. So just real quick, show of hands. Raise your hand if you are, roughly speaking, greater than 50% yes on the items. Okay. All right. How about greater than 75%? So it looked like I would say half the group is greater than 50%. What about greater than 75% on the items? Yes. Ish.
On the cusp.
Okay.
Okay.
And then I have to ask the Amazon question because they're the shining beacon in the where are y'all at on the are you 100% or pretty close?
No, 70-something.
Okay. All right.
I'll be curious what you answered no to.
So first, any questions from y'all? Thoughts on the list? Does it ring true as far as what's required? And I guess what are the biggest gaps that you've identified as far as where your company's at? Someone has to actually talk. So, should I give them the mic too? Oh, yeah. Sorry, you're doing the mic even. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. I think for us, and this came from your guys' talk earlier, is using quality assurance more as a monitor of how well we're executing to process or to training versus customer satisfaction. I think we're definitely in the former rather than the latter.
More like kind of the checkbox exercise.
Are they asking these questions? Are they leading the guest to this particular, next step? Are they following up with the right policy and process communication stuff, things like that?
I think that we've evolved in the last year to where now, and we use an outsource model for the majority of our contact centers today. And we used to rely on our partners to quality monitor for compliance. And we used to do calibrations with them to make sure that that's what they were doing. And so we changed our quality group to a continuous improvement group. We leave the compliance piece to the outsource partners, and what that group now focuses on is customer experience, customer effort, and looking and mining for information that will ultimately lead to us making business decisions to make things better for the customer.
And that's an internal group?
Yes, it is. And so I think where our gap is today is I think we're relying too much on some speculation in some of those observations versus asking the customer. So I think that's something that we could shore up.
Was anybody here, who went to Austin? You don't count. Did you come to the quality session by chance? Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, anyone that's heard us, we have can you hear me or no? Well, and I think this is what you're going to say. I call it my quality rant. So anyone that's been to anything that COPC's done as far as quality, and I'll do a little bit of the rant. I won't take up the whole 30 minutes. I could take up hours. But to your point, because we go to a lot of different companies, and again and again and again. I don't know who invented quality programs 20 years ago or 30 years ago, but they all do the same thing, right? And we look at it from tons of effort, tons of money, and you look at the ROI, and you talk to. You can't go talk to the person in charge of the quality program because there's a lot of pride in what they do, and they probably help build it, and it's a hard conversation to have to say, we don't think that's the right way to do it. But you go up the chain and talk to executives or someone that's new to the company, and they'll say, yeah, and it sounds like you're a little bit ahead of this. I know I need a quality department, and I'm supposed to have and I have a quality department. I'm not entirely certain what it does for me. So, and again, that's our rant, and in Austin, they spoke to it too. But again, getting to where it's such a great place to collect information because you're listening to phone calls. You know exactly what's going on, and you can find out why the issues aren't being resolved. You can gather business intelligence. You can do all those things. So we are huge proponents of changing that and getting there from a quality perspective.
So just to stay on quality for a second, does anybody else have the quality gap? You think within your organizations where you see quality scores that are high and CSAT results that are low or lower? So similar issues. So as Paul was saying, the quality program, the quality process can be one of the best windows into the customer experience that most companies just don't take advantage of. So as you were saying, trying to uncover what the process level issues are that are affecting the customer versus trying to coach your way out of it, identifying what the agent did or didn't do right. So, for example, if through your quality monitoring program, one of the items on your quality form was the customer's issue resolved, you have to think of that from the customer's perspective. Not, did the agent follow the right steps? Did the agent use the right tools? It is, was the customer's issue resolved, yes or no? And if it wasn't, then breaking that out into agent issues and non-agent issues. And all these non-agent issues are typically what are not captured through quality, but it's a great opportunity to uncover, is there a policy issue, process issue, a training issue, a knowledge base issue? And so you can get to the root cause really quickly through quality and what's driving the customer experience. And we've been talking a lot about this big data and speech analytics, and this is super easy to do. And you don't have to have a ton of data or data points or samples to do it. Make sense?
Just one more thing on my rant, and then I'll stop. Because I do this all the time, and it drives me, because I'm an ops guy, right? So, and quality, for me, quality should be a tool to where you're getting actionable recommendations and giving it to operations and giving actionable information to executives to say, hey, did you know that these 3 policies are costing us 8, 10 points of issue resolution? Now, the execs might look at the policies and say, wow, we can't change any of those. That's okay, but we just want you to know. And I always tell the story because I listen to a lot of phone calls, and I'll sit next to agents, and I'll listen to the phone call, and afterwards I'll say, well, how did the phone call go? And I think I did pretty well. I did the opening. I said, welcome to Company X, and I said the customer's name. And when I put them on hold, I asked them if I could put them on hold. And then they were on hold for 2 minutes, but I got back off and I told them again. And then I did the closing, and I said their name 3 times because it's really important if we say their name 3 times. And so I think the call went pretty well. And then, having listened to the call, I'm like, yeah, but were you able to resolve the issue? Nah, I couldn't quite figure it out, but it was still a really good call. And I'm just banging my head up against the wall going, this is driving me crazy. And it's not the agent's fault, right? They've got the quality form, and there's the wrong things on the quality form, right? So I'll end my rant here on that, but it's everyone's shaking it. And that's where we've gotten with the quality programs, and we want to shift it and get it to something that's going to add more value.
Okay. Any other gaps that folks are seeing on their checklist that you'd like to talk about or ask the group about?
Or who's doing something well?
Yeah.
So just to carry on a little bit about this conversation and your rant, one of the things that, as we've been evolving this continuous improvement department that we identified as well, we know there are compliance issues, whether it be for PCI or various and sundry reasons. By doing things like you have to say the name 3 times, or you have to do things in a particular order with a checkbox mentality, and if you do it out of order, perhaps you're getting scored lower. We were really creating robotic sounding interactions with our customers. It's not how people speak to each other or how people want to interact with each other. And so we revamped the entire process to eliminate those and make for a much more conversational experience.
And have you seen a results in your CSAT?
That's another discussion.
Okay.
We are revamping our CSAT process as we speak.
Yeah, I'm going to continue your question a little. That is one of the areas we're doing well. We had to transform our quality program for the same reasons you talked about. And so I love your tree. I swear I've seen a tree like that because we've done something like that, right? From an agent perspective, we changed our quality program for them in two ways. Three actually. One was we tied their CSAT scores to their actual performance and not just as a bonus opportunity. This is a base expectation to meet the customer. And with that freed up their ability to your point, not be rote about it, but what's the way that you can relate and have a conversation and that type of thing. We also shifted to a quality form that was based on what matters to the customers and a range of performance on each of those kind of metrics, if you will, that said doing it from a novice level up to an expert level. So it wasn't a matter of just right or wrong. It was a matter of, yeah, you technically gave the right answer, but if you could have done something a little bit better, been a little bit more proactive with kind of the guidance on the next steps and just kind of thinking ahead in the experience, you're moving into an expert range, right? And then we didn't take those quality scores, so to speak, and add them to their performance. It was a guiding measure because they were held by what the customer really said ultimately. And so that kind of got rid of this disparity between the quality center being the evil empire. And then to your point about the 9-age improvement on our satisfaction surveys, we asked the customer simply, was your issue resolved? And if the answer was no, then you kick into the tree and that's where you find your opportunity. So.
Yeah, again, didn't mean for this to be a quality session, but I guess it can. I think actually next door, if I read their sign, is it connecting training and quality, which maybe you'll go from here to there. I'd kind of want to check out. So you might do this by yourself next time. But the other thing, and again, just having done this a lot, is your QAs themselves. If you've been through this, but for those of you that haven't, if you make this transformation, you might have to swap out your QA team, because I've done this a lot, and I'm at about a 50% rate of QAs that can make that transition from doing the check boxes to thinking, because it's a gray area and it's not as cut and dry, and you have a lot of QAs that just can't do it. So be leery. If for those of you that are going through that transformation, be leery of that. I don't know if you experience the same thing. It's just a different way of thinking. And again, I'm at about a 50% rate of some can, some can't, but just heads up on that too.
I guess mine's more of a question than a comment or a statement, but to your point, in that transformation from the checkbox, if you will, and my point of view is a little dated. I've been out of the large call center environment for 2 or 3 years at this point, and work in a much smaller operation within Toyota now than I used to. But one of the greatest sources of frustration that I had was that checkbox mentality. And it was a tug of war, if you will, between our various sites. We have 3 across the country, and there were 2 that were very black and white, data-oriented, and I tend to play a little more in the gray. Maybe it came through from my hair or something, I don't know. But, so the source of frustration for me was exactly what you said. You do the check the box kind of thing and then assign a score to it, but that good score never necessarily translated to good customer service. My sense is that a quality analyst, to your point, knows whether a call is good or bad, knows whether the customer is happy or not, knows whether the issue got resolved or not, knows whether they got lied to, whether they were given good information, whether the information was compliant and safe or risky to the company. And you can either say it was a good call or it was a bad call. But I think there's this desire on the part of the organization, at least I saw it inside Toyota, to say, if you say it's a bad call, why is it a bad call? And then it becomes he said, she said kind of a deal, and the agent gets very defensive. But the other side of the coin is, well, you didn't say their name 3 times, so that cost you 5 points. So then the agent's looking at it and going, is that really important? Does that really matter? How did the call go? So you can hear calls that score out greatly. They're incredibly robotic. They're awful calls in my estimation, but they score perfectly, and we saw that in CSAT, where you'd tie a quality score of 100 to a customer-rated call that was in the 60s, right? So it's that connect those 2 gaps, because we did external survey with our customers as well, and then we were able to marry it up to the quality scores in some cases. So how do you make that transformation? How have you been able to successfully make that transformation?
For starters, it's something that Mindy said, which is first understanding what is really important to your customers. So how do you find out what that is? You have to ask your customers. So one of the things on here actually is doing a key driver survey. Has anybody done one or know what that is? You probably have. If not, it's a very, it's a fairly significant survey that you only do once a year or every other year to really understand and uncover what's most important to your customers. And that covers the gamut of their journey with your company. And then from that, from an operational perspective, it uncovers this 5, 6, or 7 aspects that are truly key drivers to overall satisfaction. And it's typically no more, it's usually around 6. And they're common across companies, and there's a few differences at times. But those are the 6 things that should be on your quality form in what we would call the customer section. And so if you've done the analysis and the research to know what's important to your customers, those are the 5 or 6 or 7 things that go on your form, then the customer section of your quality score should align with CSAT. And it takes what happens with quality forms over time, there's a lot of opinion that goes into them. You've got marketing that wants stuff. You've got operational leaders that have been there a long time. And so it morphs into this mishmash of stuff. And so when you do the analysis, then it's data. It's what your customers are saying. So it takes the opinion out of it, and it's an easier than transformation to make overall.
And the other thing is the ability to connect to the CSAT scores. I don't know if everybody can do that, but that is hugely valuable because then it's straight from the customer, right? So you take the opinion out of it as far as now on there. The other thing is, because you don't want the agents to get defensive, there needs to be the way we phrase it is, did the agent do everything in their power to resolve the issue? If they did, then it's a pass for the agent. Now the call can still fail because there was a policy or something. So it's making that differentiation and having the agents feel like, and you want that mindset, right? As long as I do everything I can to resolve the issue, I'm good, I'm not going to fail. We did it once where we combined them, this is early on, and I thought, oh no, that's not good because there's that defensiveness and it's not fair to them. So being able to break that out, and then if you can have that information where you can tie it to a CSAT survey, that's fantastic. So I've had some companies that automatically very quickly get CSAT surveys. It's there that they go to pull calls from, because that's random in and of itself. Now you want to do it separate to make sure you're statistically, but that's kind of the pool they go to as far as because we want to be able to always make that connection to make sure we're aligned with the customer. Oh, hold on. I think we're almost out of time and turned into a quality discussion.
Yeah, and I've got another quality question. So I think you guys talked well about how a conversation can get a really low quality assessment but a high customer satisfaction score. What if it goes the other way, where it's a really great customer satisfaction score, but by every measure of how you train and coach, it's just terrible? Is that still a valid way to think about things? Can you still use that? Is that where the quality template comes into play? I'm just trying to sort of get a feel for the other side of that equation.
Again, that happens. And this isn't a rocket science answer, but I've done it before where it's like, hey, that went well, but that's not how we want you to handle every call. Right now, if you get more evidence that, I'm making extreme examples. Yeah, if you yell them and it's okay, they thought it was great. But certain places in the U.S. work that way. No, again, that's how I coach it is, it turned out okay, but, we don't want you to handle that call everywhere, every time. So it doesn't work.
I can think, I know we have to scoot real quick, but I do have a client, and they have that problem frequently, where they've got high CSAT but low quality scores. And we found out they were actually not calibrated. Their form was right, but they were not calibrated with the customer, or their scoring criteria wasn't. So they were consistently getting low quality scores, and they shouldn't have. And they were good calls. So there's that can happen. And then as Paul was saying, you've got the process level monitoring and trying to uncover these things, and then the agent level coaching that comes into play that, that could be better. And so that still should happen, and that still should happen with supervisors who manage those agents. So, yeah.
All right, I think
Okay, so that turned, yes.
Again, turn into a quality discussion, but
So,
questions about the checklist.
Yes, and we failed to mention, if you want to leave your checklist with us, we will review them and send back some specific suggestions or recommendations for you, and we'll email them back to you. Or just catch us in a break or call one of us you'll get our contact information, and we'll be happy to talk through any of the other items. Okay? All right. Thank you.